Welcome to the Life Rocks podcast. In this podcast, we explore how nature, science, education, and culture can benefit all children and future generations. This is a show for educators, parents, mentors, and anyone interested in making the lives of our children, families, and communities better. So sit back, take a breath, and enjoy the show. And now for your host, Asher Cloran.
Hello and welcome to the Life Rocks podcast, everyone. I'm here tonight with Claudine, or her early morning, as you can see on the clock behind her. Claudine is a mum of 3 kiddos, a wife, and loves the outdoors. When she realized that so many people wanted to be outdoors, but they may not know how to get there, it was clear to her that her knowledge and experience was needed. Her love for the outdoors and passion to connect people to the resources they need inspired her to create the Outdoor Play Connection. The deep relationships that have resulted from these groups are an important part of her motherhood support system. Her goal is to help other mums experience this support for their motherhood too. Claudine, welcome. Thanks for coming along to the Life Rocks podcast. How are you today?
Thank you so much for having me. I am doing well. And yes, it is about almost 5 a.m. And this is actually when I wake up to do my work. So I'm very happy to be here.
Just before the sun rises and a sparrow's fart and all of those other early bird catches the worm type of metaphors apply. For sure.
Yes, I usually I have a tree outside that I like to sit under. I have a little table outside and it's my outdoor office, but right now it's winter and it's a little cold for me to type in 30 degrees. So yeah, my office moves indoors for winter.
Actually, the work that you do in taking people outdoors and inspiring your community in such a local way and such a profound way creates a lot of impact, and I can see that with what you're doing. So, some time has passed. We're in the winter period. Give people an overview of some of the things that you do with mums and how you help people get outside.
Yes, it's something I really am very passionate about because I understand how it can just feel overwhelming in getting outdoors, even though you want to be there. Life can feel busy. You can feel like there's just not one more thing you can do. And I really like to help bring uniqueness to how can you bring the outdoors into the life you're already living. It's not so much as adding one more thing to your list of things to do. How can you add it into the things you're already doing?
Yeah.
Along with, and that's how I kind of work with my clients one-on-one is I really help them figure out how to make the outdoors work in their lifestyle.
Nice.
I like to really help people understand, it doesn't mean you have to go out on an all-day hike. It doesn't even mean you have to go to a trail or a forest. You can get outdoors by doing some very simple things like taking a meal outside, taking a walk around the block. How about parking your car further in the back of the parking lot and then taking that walk to wherever you're going to be a little bit longer? And then I like to bring intention to what you're doing. So if you are going to get your mail or you are going to take your trash out, take a moment. What about 5 minutes? And just stand there and observe what's going on around you. Whether you're looking at the sky, whether you're looking at the trees or anything new that's growing, maybe you have animals around in your area, but what it is around you that you can intentionally take notice of to then increase your time outdoors, because we are actually outdoors a lot more than we think. But when you bring intention to that time, you start to actually be able to absorb the benefits of being there. And I feel like life can just make us I just got to take out the trash. I just have to go get the mail. I just need to go to the store. But if we slow down a little bit and we take that time to breathe that air and look at the sky and see what's going on, it can just be a world of difference. And even on a road trip, if you're stopping and you're stopping for that pit stop, right? It's hurry up, go, we got to keep going. What if you weren't hurrying up? What if it's we have to go to the bathroom, we have to get some food, but we are also going to stop and see where we are. And see what's different from where we were. And when we take road trips, we really love doing that. And taking the time. And if it's a half hour, it's a half hour. If it's an hour, it's an hour. But you're actually taking in the space that you're in. And that really helps people understand, like, being outdoors is really about being intentional about where you are.
Yeah.
So that's one way that I love to work with people. I also work with people in helping them actually create their own outdoor groups. This is something I've been doing for a very long time.
Yeah.
But the logistics can be overwhelming. It's, where do I go? How do I invite people? Like, what day and time? How do I even get my kids outdoors? Like, there's a million questions that you have, and just trying to get outside with a group. I've been doing this for 8 years. Logistics are my superpower. That's just kind of the thing that I know how to do very easily. So I just kind of help people figure out all those logistics so it's not overwhelming to do. The benefits of being outdoors are so wonderful.
Huge.
But when you add community to that, you're banking into two separate benefits there.
Yeah.
You're getting the benefits of the outdoors and the benefits of community. And humans are really meant to be together in community. We are meant to be together. We thrive that way. It's also a lot easier to get out of your house with your kids if their friends are going, right? It's just easier for yourself and for your kids.
Yeah.
And when it's not easy, you have this amazing community to support you in getting there. Because how many times are you just late because you have your kids and somebody's got to go to the bathroom, or somebody doesn't want to put their gloves on, or somebody just doesn't want to get dressed?
Yeah.
All of those things can feel very stressful, and like you're just not going to get there. But when you take that pressure off and your friends are just going to be there and you'll get there when you get there, it just allows those situations to be a lot easier. And then when you get there, you can decompress with the other moms and be like, this was my morning. And then everyone will be like, yeah, I did that yesterday. So bringing people outdoors in community, I feel, just really gives so much support to us in our journey as parents. And I really find that that's been such a huge impact for me as a mom. And just having that support system, it's kind of a joke in my neighborhood where it's like, hey, how'd you meet Claudine? And everyone's like, in the forest.
Yeah.
It's just where I've met most of my friends. And man, I have some amazing relationships and friendships from just gathering together and doing these adventures together. And so recently, as you said, since we've spoke last, I've started actually creating more outdoor play groups, where we are doing 2 hours out in the forest today, and we are doing nature art, and we're doing kid-paced and actually kid-directed walks. Lots of fun things. And in the winter right now, we're really focused on movement. We've been doing scavenger hunts and building shelters and all these fun things. So now I'm really trying to help also my local community come together, because the other things I can do with anybody anywhere, and I love that I can bring that impact. But now I'm really just also adding on to that local impact, where I'm helping people locally just get together and be in the forest together, and I do all the logistics for you.
Amazing. That is so cool. Yeah, I think there's a lot to jump into there, but on the community aspect, like, how many groups of large people do we see in parks anymore? How many groups do we see walking in the woods anymore? How many groups do we see enjoying time by a river anymore? And it seems to be only on public holidays, or and they got the barbecue out and all the rest of it, which is totally cool and fine, but we don't need a holiday to get outside. Yeah, I think I was just saying that we don't need holidays in order to get outside. We can, do a little bit of logistics, come up with a plan, and the biggest step in any journey is definitely the first one. So it sounds like you've got a lot of momentum, doing what you do. And yeah, some parents who are looking to get into nature and integrate it more as a habit, that can be a bit daunting. So, go in a bit deeper into how you help establish these patterns for families or groups, or encourage individuals to do it. Because, yeah, it can be hard to create habits as a family, or the perception of creating habits as a family can at least be hard. So how do you kind of get in there and weave some magic?
Yeah. So One thing is having the local groups is, if you have somewhere to be, it tends to help you get there.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one way, is like joining one of my local groups. You could absolutely you have it on your calendar and now you have somewhere to go. But when I work with people kind of in the one-on-one and on the online space here, I like to really help them understand that there's actually a lot of time that they're outdoors already. So I'd like to dive in first as to what they're doing already.
Right.
I feel like we put a lot of pressure onto, we have to do more. There needs to be more. Yeah. And a lot of times I'll sit down with a mom and I'll be like, okay, tell me a typical week. And they talk about all these things and I'm like, okay, so you were out this time, you were out that time, like you went to a game, you went to here, like, so they don't realize that they're actually outside for a lot of the things they're doing in their week. And then we talk about how can we make that time intentional in being outside.
Right.
So like I had a client who, she's like, my kids are out all the time, but I just need more time outside. So we talked about what she did, and her kids are in sports. And I said, well, what if when your kids are in sports, you actually intentionally were there to be outside? So while your kids are in practice, she would walk around the track.
Nice.
So she was now getting the exercise she wanted, and she wanted to actually be able to be outside, and she was having that time. And I've had other clients where I work with, where it was a mother-son situation where she loves to be outside and her son just did not. And she wanted to bring them together in enjoying the outdoors in a way that they both could enjoy it. And we worked together for over 6 months, and slowly they just basically figured out how to enjoy the outdoors together in a way that they both enjoyed. It was absolutely beautiful to watch this relationship grow and change in how they taking chalk outside and making an obstacle course can actually bring you outside intentionally. And they started doing these little things that weren't actually making them take a ton of time, but that little thing of being outside on their driveway, making chalk obstacle courses, actually started that way of then becoming more into going outside on walks together. Right. And going to a local area that they could then enjoy the gardens and then into the forest. And now they hike together.
It's cool that you're pointing out how you're finding those peace points or those connection points in your day that's already happening. Like, yeah, people do spend more time outside than they realize. For me, just, and I think a lot of people who are living in a city, like I'm in a city right now in the thick of Melbourne City, which is an unusual place for me to be, but here I am. And I get to experience what it's like to connect to nature in a dense urban environment. And yeah, you have to appreciate what you've got. And going for a walk, in the afternoon or in the morning, walking to the shops rather than driving, noticing the trees, noticing the sky, whatever birds are around, like there's always something around, and you can either ignore it and be in your phone or in your headphones or, lost in your thoughts, which, but being present with nature is a different way to be. So yeah, that's great that you've managed to remind families about just those little moments that are already always happening around us. Then it's not a big step for them to, change a whole lot of things.
Yeah, and I actually I lived in New York City for about 12 years, and that's where I first started having my kids. So this journey of mine actually started in Brooklyn, New York City. Okay. And my daughter and I found a group that we joined in one of the parks. So it is possible to find this space no matter where you're living. Now we live in New Jersey. It's a dense area. We're still close to the city. But we found the places that we like, and we travel a little bit to other places. And I think bringing that intention on days where I can't get to the forest that's close to us, and just stepping outside and actually observing the nature around really makes a difference. Yeah. It just really does. And another thing I like to say is, balance does not always need to be equal. So just because maybe your day is full of work or studies or whatever it is, and you're like, oh, I just don't have all the time to get outdoors. Well, the outdoors is so incredible that you don't need the same dose of it for it to impact you. You know, I say start with 5 minutes because I feel like 5 minutes is something that does not overwhelm people.
Yeah.
5 minutes of stopping is doable, right? 5 minutes turns into 10, 5 minutes turns into 15, 5 minutes turns into 20. And when you get to that 20-minute mark is when you start to really, your intention of 20 minutes will start bringing the benefits of the outdoors. But 20 minutes feels like a lot when you're busy.
It can feel like
it really does.
Yeah.
How can I add that into my day? So that's why I like to find these unique ways of, can you step out and have your cup of coffee outside for 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Right? Can you listen to that training, or if you have a conference call that you're listening, or can you take a walk while you do that?
Yeah.
And then right before and right after, take those 5 minutes before and after and just soak in what's around you. And just kind of finding those little moments can really impact your day. And I also like to tell moms, you know, like it would be great to get out every day. We try to get out every day, but there are totally days that I am just inside and it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
That's okay. Can you get out once a week? Let's start with once a week and see how that feels, right? And when you start looking at your week and how much you're actually getting outdoors in that week, if you brought intention to it, it's like, hey, you're out like 5 times a week already.
Yeah.
Let's add a little bit to that and let's make that time more valuable because now you're paying attention to it.
Yeah, already out like 5 times a week, and then there's all these little things that we do that we could just do outside.
Yes.
You know, taking phone calls. The other day, realized that I've been going to the gym, and I just don't like the environment, like the lights, the crappy music, like everyone's ignoring each other, and I canceled that subscription and I've been working out outside and it's just so much better.
So much better.
So much better.
Yes. So much better. It is. I really love taking a workout outside, and I actually have a few friends that do fitness outdoors. It's really just wonderful.
Yeah, great.
And totally possible. Like if you just start thinking like, can I do this outside?
Yeah.
There's most things you can do outside.
Yeah, and I think there's this weird separation culture when it comes to like ages and movement, and like, so parents don't often exercise with their children around. It's like, and I get it, you know, you need parent time and children time and like have some separation sometimes, but it is really healthy to have a culture where you're doing all of these things stacked on top of each other, where you're combining your outdoor time with your social time and you're doing movement stuff. So do you want to go into some of the games or the cool, fun movement things that just have happened spontaneously for you over the past few months outside?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, we've been doing a lot of movement activities specifically because it is cold here. We're wishing it would be colder because we haven't had much snow this season. But we did this really great scavenger hunt with bingo. So all the kids had a sheet and they had to go around looking for all the things on the sheet. And we learned a lot of stuff, like what is a boulder? A boulder has to be, I know you're gonna have to convert this, but it's 10.1 inches is what classifies a boulder.
Wow. There you go.
So with boulders and chipmunks and birds and specific birch bark trees, finding mud, finding moss. So we were just moving around our area. We have this really nice little classroom space that we go to first, and then we kind of talk about what we're going to do, and then we just kind of go out and do it. And we were hiking and walking, and we were just following the kids, trying to find all these things. And so many kids still needed bingo, and they all needed an animal. Yeah. And it's winter, so they're not out as prevalent right now.
Right.
But they were so determined to get bingo and make sure their friends had bingo, right? It's a class of 15 kids, but they all wanted to help each other. And we were walking, we're getting towards the end of our hike, towards the end of our
bingo
day.
Means
bingo, you have to get like, I'm sorry, I should explain that. So it's like boxes, right? It's a grid, and you have to get them either in a diagonal or straight across or up and down. So you have to find the things and then create that. So a lot of people had like, they just needed one square to win bingo, and it was an animal. So we're getting towards the end, and all of a sudden one of the kids saw a deer. And it was the best thing because they knew if they screamed, they would scare the deer. So all the kids were going like screaming with the quietest voices to get all their friends to come and see the deer. It was just so wonderful because it just brought so much excitement, but so much reality to like, don't scare the deer. Everybody needs to see the deer. And this was just really just a fun activity that we got to do. And they were all so excited that they actually saw a deer. And it's just magical how Forrest just produced a deer at the right time for my class. That was one thing that we did recently. And actually we had some snow in our class last week.
Nice.
Which we'd all been waiting for. And we were actually able to track an animal, most likely a fox. But when we started walking into our classroom area, it was just covered in this beautiful layer of snow. And we saw these fresh prints. It was just magnificent. And so all the kids just stayed to one side, and we just followed those tracks until we could find them. And then the tracks would stop and everybody would look around and see, where did he jump? And it was just really fun to see how the kids were trying to assess, where was this animal going? What was he doing? And then where the tracks ended was in this really wonderful, we like to call them nature playgrounds, where a couple of trees were down and they were climbing the trees. And it's like this animal led us to this beautiful nature playground that we then played in for the rest of class before we left.
That's so cool. Yeah, nature
it was really fun.
All of these nuanced games that just simply emerge. I remember one in a pine forest where the cobwebs have set up, obviously, between all the trees. Pine forests are, somewhat, they're man-made plantations, but there's a certain beauty to them anyway, especially if they're old. And, the cobwebs would be set up, and it's like you had to find your way through there without destroying any cobwebs. So it was this labyrinth game, and getting under things and crawling around.
Yes.
Yeah, being really careful not to disturb anyone's web. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. And another thing we've done recently, which the kids really enjoyed, was the week before we actually had tracks to follow. We created our own tracks. It was
Oh yeah.
The kids broke up into two different teams, and they gathered sticks, and they actually used the sticks to point the direction that their animal was going. And they created a track, and then they all hid in a spot to be that animal. And then they switched. So like one team would go and try to follow the tracks that the other team made and to try and find them. And now my group is actually, we're ages 2 through 12. So that's another thing I think we haven't talked about yet is, how does that look? I think that's something people don't really think about. Like, wait, you have 2-year-olds and 12-year-olds?
Yeah.
Yes. And it's amazing because, when these groups broke up into creating these tracks, like the little kids were having so much fun, like seeing the big kids make their tracks. And then when they had to all hide and be the animal, it was just so fun to see all these ages together and bringing the littles into it. And then the other team had their littles come and like help look for the tracks.
Yeah.
It's just so magical what multi-age kid groups can do and how it fosters so much leadership into those older kids. And it brings so much learning to the younger kids looking up to the older kids, and not just they're not seeing adults do things, they're seeing other kids do things.
Yeah, they see all the stages of learning.
All the stages. And like my kids have been doing this since they were 2 years old, each of them. I now have 3 kids. And I've watched them since they were 2 up until now 12, and how they're doing a lot of the similar things, but in a different way in their development, right? As they've grown, all their projects have shifted to their capabilities and their development.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize is that a 2-year-old can do the same project as a 12-year-old or an 8-year-old or 6-year-old because they're going to do it differently.
Yeah.
They're going to take the materials and concept of these open-ended activities and they're going to apply what they can do. And
Mm.
it's going to be magnificent because it's what they can do. It's going to be different, but it's going to still give them all something from the same exact activity.
Yeah, I'm all about that. And I think it's something that's so underrated is age diverse learning groups. And it's a very industrialized schooling model, is this whole age segregation. And I think it's convenient maybe for standardized testing, but it's abstracted away from learning and development and community at its core, which was always age diversity. So, yeah, once again, we're splitting up parents away from kids and old people away from, the younger generations. I'm thinking of like nursing homes now, and it's a very very backwards way of thinking. But Montessori, for instance, or even in some Steiner schools, there's a bit more of that going on. And I think as well, COVID definitely has encouraged more age diversity, wouldn't you say? Because parents have had to homeschool, and you can't split your kids up at home. You got to do it all at once.
Yes, exactly. And we do homeschool. We always have, even pre-COVID.
Okay.
And I have three kids, three very different ages. I have a 4-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
And there's things that they do individually, and there's a lot of things we do together. And I can read a book to all three of them, and they're all going to pull information from it differently.
Sure.
They're all going to hear different things. They're going to learn from it differently. So I really love bringing the reality of multi-age groups to people and just opening your mind to having all these ages together and learning from each other. And I like to see myself not so much as a teacher, but more of a guide and an observer.
Yeah.
Where I'm observing their rhythm, I'm observing their energy. So it takes about 2 to 3 weeks where I can then find where the group that we have, like, where is their lull in their energy? Where do they need a snack? Where do they need to get the energy out? Because some groups will be different, where it's like they get together and their energy is right on right away. And we need to do the activity right away. In some groups, they get there and they want to sit and they want to have a snack right away.
Yeah.
But being aware of that rhythm and not saying this is the structure of the class, it's a very different way of thinking. I structure my classes and I have an activity, I have books to read, and I know we're going to have these 2 hours together. But I'm more focused on the kids and their energy. Like the day that we followed those tracks, that was not the activity I planned.
Yeah.
That was an activity that the kids found and were aware of, and we went with it. And I'll do that activity another week, right? But the fact that we had fresh snow and the kids were excited about these tracks, like they learned so many different things in staying, consistent and trying to find that animal, in looking at different directions. They found so many different things because they were looking for the tracks. So they were looking deep down at the ground, and they were experiencing like different kinds of plants that were like different moss. And then we found this great nature playground that we wouldn't have found because this animal led us there. So I think it's important to have a plan.
Right.
And I really believe the best plan is a plan that can change.
Hey, that's great. Yeah, flexible plans. So
now, for those of you who don't know, Life Rocks is not just a podcast. It is an education foundation centered around connecting children to the magic of nature through earth sciences. As a self-funded foundation and startup, we are constantly seeking support so that we can continue our great work. So if you feel called to donate to Life Rocks, please head down to the show notes and find the relevant donation link. We accept regular money as well as cryptocurrencies. We greatly appreciate you, our Life Rocks community. Now, back to the show.
I mean, all of that's so awesome. What do you say to the parent out there who might be thinking, that's all well and good, but what about, is my child going to perform in high school? Are they going to be learned enough, educated enough to get good grades, to get into university, and to get, the right jobs?
Yes, they will.
Yeah.
If you believe that they will, they will. I think it's a big thing on us as parents that we feel a lot of pressure that we have to make sure they achieve this. Your kid has everything they need to achieve it. And if you are their guide and their resource in that, maybe your kid is struggling maybe to understand math, they might be struggling to understand math in the form that it's coming to them. Change how it's presented. You can do math in the forest. You can do math outdoors. You can do math in so many different ways. You can do science in so many different ways. I think it's take the pressure off of yourself that I have to make sure my kid does this. And instead, take a look at your child and see, how does my kid enjoy learning?
Yeah.
How does my kid enjoy taking in information? Because they will.
Yeah.
They're meant to. And there's so much pressure on us that we sometimes forget that time outdoors will actually bring more learning. There's so much development that happens in climbing, in balance, in, exploring. All of that balances so much in the brain, especially as children are developing.
Yep.
It's so important. So I would say getting time outdoors, this is another thing where balance is not equal. They need more time outdoors than they do study time.
Yep.
They just do.
Yeah.
And if they have that time outdoors, the time of the book learning is easier because they've had that time to get the energy out and all of those physical things that they need. I really feel a lot of this is backwards, where recess time is 45 minutes or an hour. It needs to be the other way around. Kids need to be out more. They need to have more breaks. We all do. You need to get up from your desk, get away from your computer. You need to take a walk and move your body. Movement is so important for our brains, not just our physical aspect of our bodies, but it's really important for our brains too.
100%. Everything that you say is golden, and the studies are there to back it up nowadays. It's not conjecture anymore that performance is somehow only for those who grind themselves into dust at a desk. It's actually enhanced by our connection to nature, and you're really summing it up there. I think for parents who work, we lead by example, and our children are going to be inspired to be healthier, and by spending our time, they're going to develop properly. Their brains and their bodies are going to develop a certain type of flexibility, resilience, balance, empathy with their environment, connection to the world, that if they want to get into advanced English or advanced mathematics, and that's their choice and their desire to do so, they will make it happen because of the confidence that they've cultivated in the living natural world.
Yeah, 1,000%. And I think one thing I would add is conflict resolution. It is amazing how much easier it is to figure out a problem when there's no walls. And when you spend time outdoors and you work your way through conflict with each other, especially in these multi-age groups, and you allow the children to have the conflict and figure out a solution, don't just tell them the solution. They are learning a life skill. They are learning to have obstacles that they know they can overcome. And I feel like that is such an amazing life skill for kids to have. And when you're home, I'm pretty sure every parent has noticed how kids climb walls if they're inside too long.
Yeah.
Go outside. There's no walls. There's plenty of sticks. There's plenty of trees. There's plenty of things to do outside. You're not confined to the space you're in. And my kids have heard me say it. I'm like, this energy, we need to go outside.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. It will resolve itself because you're in an environment where you don't feel restricted. You're in an environment where you feel like I can go over and get the space I need for the time while I'm upset and come back to the group because there's enough space. So conflict resolution is another thing that happens everywhere, but I always find it resolves so much easier outdoors, and it's building a skill.
It is a skill. It is definitely a skill. And yeah, I think, we've covered a lot here in terms of like, take a small step, integrate it into your daily life, things that are already happening in nature, capitalize on them a bit more by just opening up to the experience. Doing things with community so that you've got not just your own momentum, but the momentum of tribe, age diverse learning experiences. I'm wondering what your experience has been with some of the, let's say, youth with learning difficulties. Maybe they have hyper fixations on screen time, things like aggression or ADD type archetypes of children. What do you notice? What have you seen?
I do have kids with mostly all of those things in my classes over the time. And it's wonderful. I mean, I have a kid right now and he's such a joy. And he does have ADHD. And he does need the screens to kind of regulate. But when we're in the forest together, he doesn't ask for the screens at all. When we're together in other environments, he needs that break. But when you're outdoors, he's that kid that's, I need some space, I need to regulate. He will walk away from the group and take that time. And then he will come back to the group. And then he will re-engage with the group because he has that space that he needs to regulate. And it's just amazing. Nobody told him to do that. Nobody's saying this is what you need. He knows what he needs and nature provides it. Being in that space and in that environment just shifts everything. It also shifts the sound. A lot of kids can be very sensitive to sound, right? And I know he will cover his ears. I've seen kids where it's like too much inside. There's no walls in the forest. There's no walls outside. We do a lot of learning with our co-op outside too, and maybe in a backyard. And it's just so different. Because you have that space, the sound can be released out, right? We're not in a closed environment. Also, I find that when you're outside, you can implement learning in so many different ways, right? So it's not focused on, bookwork. And we actually do bookwork outside too. I don't know, it's just really fun to take work outside. The creativity will flow a lot more. There's a lot to be said about taking a walk or just getting out in nature just to help writer's block. But I've just seen how kids can struggle and then they just don't when we get out and we're in that different space. And you can use sticks, you can use rocks, you can use what they're balancing on. They can be balancing on a nature balance beam, a tree that's fallen. And they will actually hear things differently because they're balancing, because they're using their brain in a different way to balance. They can now hear you speaking. If a child is having a hard time understanding multiplication, take them out, let them climb, let them balance. All of a sudden, math makes sense.
Spot on. In my learning about learning and development and the vestibular system in the brain, which is our balance system, when it is stimulated for about more than 30 seconds, it drops us out of our prefrontal cortex and more into a deeper mammalian, emotional, centered, hemispheric, balanced state, which is optimal for learning. We lose that left brain dominance, which is like the world of objects, the world of things, the world of abstraction, computers, screens. And in nature, where, because I guess the unevenness of the ground as well helps, but like you say, a balance beam, or think of the child in the classroom swinging on his chair on two legs and the teacher going, hey, no swinging on your chair. Well, teachers out there, actually maybe that child is better off swinging on a chair because they're trying to regulate with that activity. They're trying to regulate by doodling on the desk, and all of these things are stimulating that right hemispheric action, which drops them into a better state of learning. So,
And all the things that are seen as normal outside become not normal or acceptable inside. Right. So like that movement of like, my kids are often just not sitting still doing things. They come back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Like that movement is needed, but it's seen as not necessary and not acceptable when you're indoors or in a classroom setting. But when you do when the classroom's outside, it's acceptable. You're supposed to move around. You're
Yeah.
supposed to be movement, right? And that's why I just love outdoor classrooms and bringing more outdoors to learning, because then go get your energy out and then come sit down, and all of a sudden it's not a big deal.
It's not a big deal.
The attention is there. The attention is there. The focus is there. They've gotten the energy out and they're not fighting the energy anymore to be able to focus.
Yeah. So it's like COVID's happened. The mainstream public really, all of their systems of the public schooling system and the reliance on that was kind of thrown to the wind. And I think a lot of people realize that they don't want their children to be educated on screens. They don't want this distance between them and the educator, and the preciousness of nature is slipping away. And I think in the midst of that tragedy emerges more and more enthusiasm for nature and more I guess the preciousness of it all.
Yeah, it brought awareness to a lot of things that were not really in sight, so to speak. And I think it's up to the school systems, right? The parents. I don't want parents to feel bad about your kids being in school. Kids need to be in school. Not everybody can homeschool. And I think the schools need to rethink this a little bit and give the kids what they need and allow the kids to have the movement that they need. And I think there would be a huge shift if when kids went to school, the first thing they did was play.
Yeah.
And they had the time to then come back and maybe do some learning and then have another section of play. And I know there's other countries in this, there are schools that do this, and the results are there. It's just a matter of, can society let go of what they think is what is needed, and can they allow the kids to move more? Because movement is really key to learning as they're developing, especially in the early years when the brain is developing. It's so important to have movement.
Yes, 100%. It's all about that sensory development. Do you see sentiment changing from, your time spent as a nature educator in general? I guess it can be hard to tell because we're like in our bubble with the people that we work with, but yeah, what do you think?
I think there's more awareness, like you said. I think parents are thinking more of, how do I get my kids outside more? So I've seen a lot of growth of forest schools and nature programs, not just locally, and connecting with more people here in the States too, and just seeing the growth of that. And I am hopeful for that. It's one of the things that I hope that I can bring awareness to, and that I can help schools to open their mind to how movement can actually bring better learning to their students, because school should be about the students. And how can we help these schools have the resources they need to get these kids outside?
Yeah.
And I know it can be easier for schools that might be in less urban or city areas, but we need to think of all schools, the city schools, the urban schools, all schools. It is possible.
Yeah.
It absolutely is possible. We just need to think it's possible. And so that's part of my journey, is that I really hope that I can bring that impact. And I would be happy to help with schools rethink that and to find ways for kids to be outdoors. And I'm hoping to launch an after school program where kids can come to one of my classes after school, because I know parents struggle with school ending and they still have to work. Well, let your kids come and have an enrichment program with me and out in the forest, to give those kids that time that they very much need, and that parents are struggling to find time to do because of just the way society is and the world is, or both parents are working, and there is very little time. And I'm very aware of that reality. So I want to be realistic in helping parents get outdoors more and helping them make those changes. Whether it's 5 minutes at a time, great, but we're going to get you there.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think it's up to the change makers, the bottom up ones, maybe like you and I, who are passionate and have the skills and the knowledge of how to, make nature fun and interactive and encourage people and all of that. And then it's up to the change makers up the top who, are in charge of the systems implementation to start to pick up these pieces and run with it. And yeah, I've observed more openness, I'd say, in those larger institutions, less less tightness around them holding to these ideals, and more like, maybe it's time we, opened up a little bit to some new ideas, because things are pretty broken and it's kind of obvious. So just on the seasonal thing for a moment, like, it's obviously cold where you are. It doesn't snow too many places in Australia, even though we had some February snow in the snowy mountains, which is kind of pretty odd. But yeah, it's usually pretty hot mostly. Melbourne, where I'm at, is not, it's on and off. You get all seasons in every day, but weather's not really any excuse not to get outside, is it?
It's not.
What do you say to parents that are like, oh, it's too cold, or,
Well, I mean, it's
what
too
if it's
cold because
raining, or,
it's not too cold, right? I think it's, again, it's the mindset of you can get outdoors, right? You just need the tools that you need. Anything can feel impossible until you have the tools you need and the knowledge you need, right? So, look, in the winter, if it's 20 degrees, and I know that's not Celsius, but when it's cold, wear gloves, wear layers. That's something that we talk about, is like how to layer up, how to layer yourself as a parent when you're outdoors with your kid, because your kid's going to be warmer than you. My kids are always shedding layers when I'm keeping them all on, although I do like to try and play a little bit too. But if you are being less active than your kids, you need to make sure you're bundled too. There's so much in having good rain gear. There's some amazing, rain mittens that you can put knit gloves underneath and then a rain mitten over. So when it is like a cold rain is kind of like one of the harder weathers to be in. But you can do it. I do it all year long. It is possible. Also realize that you might be out in summer for 6 hours. You might be out for 20 to 45 minutes in the winter. That's still going outside. You don't need to be out for 6 hours in the winter. Go out for 20 minutes. Go out for a walk, but just bundle up. There is a way to do it. And I think it's just a matter of being knowledgeable about it and understanding how. And there's you don't have to spend a ton of money on getting all of this fancy gear. I will help you figure out how to make it work, because I don't want those things to hold you back. Those are solutions, those easy solutions. That's not an excuse to not get outdoors, because there are so many ways to make that work for you. And I do love working with families in, finding the right gear. I have a bunch of different companies I work with that have really good gear that you can pass down to your kids, which I find is really great, because I have gear that's gone through 3 kids. And to me, per use, I mean, it's like money well spent. But there's lots of swap sites in my community. Again, I'm going to bring it right back to community. We all swap the gear around, because when my kid grows out of it, it goes to the next kid in the group. Nice. So there's so many benefits to community where you're all, and then they give me a little money so that I can buy the next suit for my next kid that they know is going to come back to their kid. So there's just always a way. And I think if you realize that, okay, this is a challenge and this is something that I can find a solution to, you'll find yourself getting outdoors in all weather.
Amazing. Yeah, I love that flexibility, and taking it back to your quote, the best plan is a plan that can change. And I know that you put together awesome programs for families to design their time outside, to maybe coach them through their nature connection plan, working with them. Can you talk a little bit more about your specific programs and how that might look for a parent who's, going to do some work with you?
Sure. If you're local, you can join one of my in-person outdoor play groups, which is a lot of what we were talking about and what I facilitate. I have pop-ups that come up through the weekends so that families who work and are in school can come, and that's for the whole family. Parents are always welcome to come with their kids. Parents are free. I like to say.
And we just remind us where you're local to right now.
Oh, local. I'm in New Jersey. I'm in Essex County, New Jersey. But it's kind of funny, the kids eat free. I like to say, well, parents come to my classes for free. So that's one way. But then the other ways I really love to work with people is one-on-one where I'll work with you one-on-one, or even you and your children or your child, to help you figure out how to make the outdoors possible in your lifestyle. And then my group program, I'm looking to launch in a few months, where I will be helping. It's a group program where you'll be setting up your own outdoor playgroup community, where I'll give you all the logistics, walk you through. You get 100% support from me through that time, to figure out all the logistics for a group that works for you. And that group can have a curriculum. That group can be an open free play group. And it really can be catered to exactly what you want. So I know it can be challenging when there's too many options. So that's why this program really helps you narrow down what's going to work best for you.
Awesome. Yeah, really, if anyone's interested in getting a great program together for their family and their kids, Claudine's definitely got a wealth of knowledge there. And obviously, catching up with Claudine in person would be the absolute ideal, but I'm sure that you can, cater everything that you do and think about wherever people are around the world, especially waking up as early as you do to do Zooms with other people across the other side of the world.
Yes, I'm happy to work with people in that sense, where I know you can't be direct one here, but I will absolutely share the knowledge that I have and help you have a very successful group and community outdoors.
That's awesome. So what would your wish be for the future generations of the Earth?
Oh, well, I think of this often because I have kids, right? But I hope for them. I really do hope that the world can find the balance between where we're going with technology and not forgetting nature. And that's why I say balance is not always equal. And I really see it in my kids that they really value their time in nature and their time outdoors, and they love it. And I really hope that that continues, not only with them, but that in my time here, that I can bring that to more families so that impact can continue, because technology is not going anywhere. It's really important that we understand that it's our job to understand how to use it and talk to our kids about the best ways to use technology and to welcome it into our lives as a tool, but to not forget about our foundations with nature.
Beautiful. Yeah, holding that balance between the worlds and having the children of this earth be that balancing point, finding that balancing point in themselves, staying connected to nature and having a foot and a grasp and a handle on the modern world, getting more out of it than it gets out of them.
Yes.
There's some things that I think of when you say that. Yeah. Hey, Claudine, it's been awesome having you on. I'm really grateful for the show, and I'm sure our audience is too. I'll be popping all of your website links and Instagram, and I suggest that you definitely follow along with what Claudine is up to. And we will be having more conversations in the future. And yeah, definitely. When's your newest program launching?
The group program should be probably launching in the springtime. I'm working on finalizing things now. So sometime towards the end of spring. Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. We'll have to chat to you a couple of months after you're into that and see how things are going. Do you have anything else that you'd love to leave our audience with tonight?
I would love to give them the challenge and encourage them to find a way to take 5 minutes intentionally outdoors today. Beautiful.
Beautiful. Hear that, everyone? Take time outdoors for 5 minutes. It's not much. You can do it. You can do it. Thanks, Claudine.
Thank you so much for having me.
And remember, everybody, life rocks.
Thank you so much for listening to the Life Rocks podcast. If you enjoyed the show, then leave us a review. We'll be back soon with more inspiring content, and in the meantime, remember, life rocks.